Officer Rick Donnelly thought it would be an easy win, a 17-year-old girl with no legal training against the weight of his 17 years on the force. What he didn't expect was for Ariel Manning to build a case so solid it would crack open his career in front of a full courtroom. I. The Phoenix courtroom wasn't truly quiet. The ancient ceiling fan hummed an offbeat rhythm. A clerk's pen scratched against paper. Plastic chairs creaked beneath shifting bodies. But everything seemed to pause when Ariel Manning walked in. She wore no fancy suit, just a navy blazer over khaki pants and sensible flats, the kind of outfit meant for a school debate, not a criminal trial. Yet she carried herself with unmistakable purpose. Her dark hair was pulled into a neat bun, glasses perched low on her nose, expression calm and focused. She looked like someone who already knew the ending to a story everyone else was still struggling to understand. At the defense table, she placed her worn leather binder down with deliberate care. No attorney beside her, just a high school junior facing criminal charges alone. That's when Officer Donnelly laughed, not loudly, but enough for the bailiff to glance his way. A smirk pulled at the corner of his mouth as he leaned back in his chair at the prosecutor's table, arms crossed over his broad chest. "This'll be quick," he muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. Judge Raymond Keyes peered over his reading glasses. "Miss Manning, you're representing yourself today?" "Yes, Your Honor." Her voice was steady, clear as a bell. The judge frowned. "I must caution you. This is not traffic court. You will be held to the same standards as a licensed attorney." "I understand, Your Honor." Most of the courtroom saw only what they expected to see. A naive girl from East Phoenix who'd made a foolish choice. Just another routine case, another docket number. What they couldn't see was that Ariel Manning had spent the past 4 weeks preparing as if her life depended on it. Because in many ways, it did. Her eyes scanned the courtroom, briefly settling on her mother in the back row. Patrice Manning sat rigid, hands clutched around her purse, barely breathing. Ariel gave her the slightest nod, not for reassurance, but confirmation. She was ready. The bailiff called the case. The State of Arizona versus Ariel Elise Manning, case number 22-2.135-B. 1 count obstruction of justice, 1 count interfering with police procedure. "Ready, Your Honor," Ariel said, standing tall. 2. What Officer Donnelly didn't understand as he smirked from the prosecutor's table was that Ariel Manning hadn't spent the month since her arrest feeling sorry for herself. She hadn't wasted time complaining on social media or skipping classes. Instead, she'd transformed her family's kitchen table into a command center. It all began with that video on her phone, the one she'd shot outside Roosevelt High before Donnelly had confiscated it. Before she'd been handcuffed, pushed into a police cruiser, booked, and fingerprinted. Before a file with her name had been created in the Arizona criminal justice system. That Tuesday afternoon had been brutally hot, the kind of Arizona heat that made metal surfaces burn to the touch. Ariel had been waiting at the corner of South 13th Avenue and West Adams Street after school, half listening to music while checking messages about a group project. The commotion caught her attention first, raised voices, students gathering. She approached to find D'Angelo Ruiz, a well-known junior with a reputation for being loud but harmless, arguing with a school security guard about a broken-into locker. It wasn't D'Angelo raising his voice, but the uniformed adult. Then Officer Donnelly arrived. Everyone in that part of Phoenix knew him. Square shoulders, mirrored sunglasses, perpetually resting his hand near his belt as if waiting for trouble. He wasn't school security. He was Phoenix PD, assigned to patrol the neighborhood after reports of petty crime had increased. Ariel had seen how Donnelly spoke to kids in her neighborhood, not as people, but as problems to be managed. That day, he stormed over without asking questions, grabbing D'Angelo by the arm. When the startled teenager instinctively pulled away, not throwing punches, just reacting, Donnelly slammed him against the chain-link fence. Ariel didn't think. She pulled out her phone and hit record. "You can't do that," she called out, voice clearer than she felt. "He didn't do anything." Donnelly turned, his attention shifting from D'Angelo. "Back up. Now." "I'm recording this," she replied, holding her phone higher. "You didn't even ask what happened." "You want to interfere?" Donnelly stepped toward her. "You want to be part of this?" She stood her ground. "You're not allowed to use excessive force without cause. I know my rights." His laugh was short and cold. "You know your rights? How about you learn the consequences?" Before she could respond, Donnelly had her against his patrol car, arms twisted behind her back, phone wrenched from her hand. "Obstruction," he announced loudly for his body camera. She interfered with police activity. By sunset, Ariel Manning had been processed through the system, assigned a court date, and released to her exhausted mother. The charge: obstruction of justice. The potential consequences: a criminal record that would follow her through college applications, job interviews, the rest of her life. 3. The days after her arrest passed in a haze of quiet panic. Patrice Manning worked double shifts at the VA hospital but couldn't afford a private attorney. Public defenders were overloaded. Legal aid organizations had waiting lists. So Ariel made a decision that changed everything. If no one else would fight for her, she would learn to fight for herself. She remembered her late aunt's favorite saying, "If you want someone to hear you, first learn their language." That night, she opened her laptop and began her education in the language of the law. 4 hours of courtroom videos on YouTube. Then 6 more the next night. She filled notebooks with legal terms she didn't understand, then researched their definitions. She downloaded the Arizona Criminal Code and highlighted the statutes relevant to her case. She located the public defender's office forms online and studied how motions were structured. When her cousin's girlfriend, a paralegal in Flagstaff, heard about Ariel's situation, she sent a care package: legal code PDFs, links to public case records, video tutorials on courtroom procedure. It was like throwing gasoline on Ariel's already burning determination. School became secondary. Some teachers sent concerned emails when her grades began to slip. But her history teacher, Mr. Kirkwood, recognized something different in her distraction. "You're not giving up, are you?" he asked one afternoon when she lingered after class. "No," she replied simply. "I'm just getting ready." Each morning before sunrise, Ariel cleared the kitchen table and opened her growing binder. 3 inches thick now, it contained printed statutes, handwritten notes, color-coded tabs, and transcripts from similar cases she'd found online. Yellow highlighted key legal terms. Blue marked contradictions in the police report. Red underlined Donnelly's inconsistencies. Most crucially, she had recovered her phone video through her cloud account. She watched it over 30 times, learning to break it down frame by frame, noting the exact moment Donnelly grabbed D'Angelo, the second she spoke up, the proof that her hands remained visible and non-threatening throughout. Her mother wanted her to take a plea deal. "We can't afford to gamble, baby," Patrice whispered one night over microwave leftovers. "They've got the badge. They've got the judge. You don't win in rooms like that." Ariel pushed her plate away, her voice quiet but firm. "I'm not trying to win, Mom. I'm trying to show them I don't scare easy." Later that night, she worked on her opening statement on a laptop borrowed from Mr. Kirkwood. Draft 4. Each time she read it aloud, she caught something that needed changing: a word too soft, a phrase too emotional, a sentence that didn't sound like her authentic voice. She didn't want to sound angry. Angry meant loud, and loud made people stop listening. She needed to sound measured, not because she wasn't furious, but because it frightened the system more when a young black girl from East Phoenix could keep her cool while speaking truth. 4. One Tuesday afternoon, Ariel called a legal aid hotline again, this time asking to speak with someone familiar with excessive force cases. The woman who answered, Jeanette, sounded tired but kind. "Are you filing a complaint or facing charges?" "Both," Ariel replied. "Do you have representation?" "I am my representation." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "Well, damn. All right then. What's your name?" Over the next half hour, they reviewed her case. Jeanette explained which parts of the obstruction statute the prosecutor would emphasize and warned her about how judges typically respond to teenage defendants without counsel. "Don't try to sound smart," Jeanette advised. "Try to sound certain." Those words became Ariel's mantra. She wrote them on a sticky note and attached it to the front of her binder. "Don't try to sound smart, try to sound certain." Support began to materialize from unexpected places. Mr. Kirkwood offered to be a character witness. Her cousin's girlfriend sent instructions on how to structure cross-examinations. Even Mr. LaRue, the school janitor who rarely spoke more than a few words, handed her a legal dictionary he had kept from night classes he'd taken years ago. People started to root for her, not because she asked for sympathy, but because she never asked for pity. They saw her determination and responded to it. But Officer Donnelly remained confident. To him, she was just another mouthy teenager who would crumble under pressure. He had no idea that the girl sitting across from him had prepared more thoroughly than many of the attorneys he'd faced in his career. V. The courtroom looked different on the day of the trial. Same judge, same ceiling fan, but now the gallery was filled with familiar faces. Teachers from Roosevelt High, D'Angelo and his mother, even a reporter from the Arizona Daily Sun, notepad in hand, having heard about the teenager defending herself against a police officer. The prosecutor's opening statement was brief and dismissive, painting Ariel as disruptive and disrespectful, someone who had interfered with police business and escalated a routine situation. Donnelly sat behind her, occasionally nodding, his posture relaxed and confident. When Ariel's turn came, she approached the center of the courtroom. She carried her notes but didn't read from them. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court," she began, her voice steady. "I'm not a lawyer. I won't pretend to be one. But I do know what I saw, and more importantly, I know what I lived. I'll let the facts speak for me." The simplicity of her statement had power. Even Judge Keyes seemed to take notice, his expression thoughtful as she returned to her table. The prosecutor called Donnelly to testify first. He took the stand with practiced ease, describing how he'd responded to reports of an aggressive student at Roosevelt High. "When I arrived, the situation had escalated," he explained. "I restrained the student for safety purposes when this young woman began shouting and interfering with my ability to manage the incident." When the prosecutor finished, the judge turned to Ariel. "Your witness." She stood, her heart steady. "Officer Donnelly, how long have you been with the Phoenix Police Department?" 17 years. "And in those 17 years, how many times have you arrested students for obstruction without any physical altercation occurring?" Donnelly shifted slightly. "Several. It depends on the threat level." "Was I physically threatening you that day, sir?" "You were yelling. I couldn't focus on securing the scene." "I was standing 12 feet away from you, correct?" He paused. "Approximately." "You didn't ask me to leave the area. You told me to back up. Is that standard protocol?" "Yes." "Is grabbing a student by the back of the neck also standard protocol?" The prosecutor jumped up. "Objection. Assumes facts not in evidence." "Sustained," said Judge Keyes. Ariel nodded calmly. "No further questions at this time, Your Honor." She returned to her seat, not rushed, not flustered. The prosecutor called two more witnesses, a school security officer who vaguely remembered seeing Ariel with her phone out, and a student who admitted they weren't paying close attention to what happened. Then it was Ariel's turn to present her case. She called Mr. Kirkwood first, who described her as thoughtful, responsible, and diligent. "She's the student others go to when they don't understand the assignment," he testified. "Not the type to act impulsively or disrespectfully." Next came D'Angelo, nervous but clear. "She was just trying to help me," he said. "She didn't touch anybody. She just asked what was happening and took out her phone." "Did she threaten Officer Donnelly?" "No way." "Did she physically interfere with him?" "Number." "She just stood there recording." Ariel nodded, then turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I'd like to enter a video file into evidence. It's from my phone, taken during the incident in question." The judge allowed it, and the courtroom watched in silence as the video played. The audio was slightly crackly but clear enough, Donnelly shouting, D'Angelo being pushed against the fence, Ariel's voice calm but firm. "What are you doing? He didn't do anything." When the footage showed Donnelly approaching her, the camera angle tilted wildly, but the audio captured everything that followed. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Ariel didn't watch the screen. She watched Donnelly, noting how his confident expression faltered for the first time. When the video ended, the silence was deafening. Judge Keyes leaned forward, fingers steepled. "Officer, would you like to respond to what we've just seen?" Donnelly shifted uncomfortably. "The video doesn't show the entire interaction, Your Honor. You can't see the angle I was positioned at. She was provoking an already volatile situation." Ariel stood. "Objection. That's a subjective interpretation, not a factual response." The judge nodded. "Sustained. Officer, please stick to the facts." Donnelly attempted another explanation. "I perceived her behavior as threatening to officer safety." Ariel remained composed. "Officer Donnelly, in your original police report you stated, and I quote, the subject approached aggressively, yelling, and failed to comply with verbal warnings. Is that correct?" "Yes." "But in the video we just watched, my voice is calm and I'm standing still. I never moved toward you at all." "Videos can be deceiving." "I agree," Ariel replied. "That's why I've prepared a timestamp analysis." She held up a printed document with screenshots. "This frame shows my location when you first noticed me. This frame, 5 seconds later, shows I'm standing in exactly the same spot. No movement, no approach, just recording. Would you like to challenge the accuracy of these timestamps?" The courtroom was utterly still. "I'm not a video expert," Donnelly muttered. "That's all right," Ariel continued. "I've had this footage reviewed by a digital media analyst from Northern Arizona University. I can call her as a rebuttal witness if necessary." The prosecutor stood quickly. "Your Honor." "I disclosed this witness 2 days ago as required," Ariel interjected. "It's in the file." Judge Keyes checked his papers. "She did. It's here." Ariel returned to her seat with measured steps, like someone who had just moved a chess piece and already knew her opponent's next 5 moves would lead to checkmate. The analyst's testimony confirmed what everyone had already seen. The video showed no tampering, no editing, and no movement from Ariel during the time Donnelly claimed she had approached aggressively. His credibility was crumbling by the minute. Then Ariel made her final move. "Your Honor, I request the court consider previous complaints filed against Officer Donnelly, specifically 3 filed within the last 5 years. 1 from a parent at Dunbar Elementary, 1 from a gas station clerk on McDowell Road, and 1 from a motorist detained during a traffic stop last November." The judge raised an eyebrow. "You're referring to public misconduct records?" "Yes, sir. All available through Freedom of Information requests. All filed but never prosecuted." The prosecutor was on her feet instantly. "Your Honor, those are unsubstantiated accusations that have no bearing on this case." "Which is why I'm not arguing their individual merit," Ariel responded, turning to face the courtroom. "I'm asking the court to consider pattern. A pattern of overreaction. A pattern of targeting people who question authority. I'm not his first stop, just the first one who brought a binder." A ripple of reactions passed through the courtroom. Not loud, but palpable. Donnelly sat rigid, his earlier confidence entirely evaporated. The judge called a 30-minute recess. When court reconvened, his demeanor had visibly changed. He seemed more serious, more focused. "I've reviewed the evidence and considered the testimony provided," he began, "and I find myself with significant concerns about this case. Miss Manning, your presentation of evidence, your questioning, and the context you've provided raise valid doubts about these charges." The prosecutor's lips pressed into a thin line. "As such," Judge Keyes continued, "the charge of obstruction is dismissed." Ariel remained perfectly still, as if her body hadn't yet registered what her mind had achieved. "Furthermore," the judge added, "I will be submitting a formal recommendation for review of Officer Donnelly's conduct in this incident, as well as examination of the previous complaints mentioned." That's when Ariel finally exhaled, not dramatically, but with the quiet relief of setting down something heavy you've carried too long. 6th. When Ariel stepped outside the courthouse, the afternoon sunlight felt different, sharper, clearer than she remembered. Her mother waited at the bottom of the steps, arms wrapped tightly around herself as if containing a storm. They didn't speak. They just embraced. Not the kind of hug that lasts forever, but the kind that says, "We made it through. Now we can breathe again." D'Angelo approached with his mother. "That was incredible," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't know you could do all that." "Neither did I," Ariel admitted, "until I had to." The reporter from the Daily Sun hovered nearby, notebook ready, but Ariel shook her head slightly. Not today. There would be time for words later. In the week that followed, the story spread through Phoenix. Not viral, not headline news, but steady and persistent. The Daily Sun's article called her "the teen who made the court listen." School board members began questioning police presence on campuses. Legal aid organizations reached out offering college resources and mock trial scholarships. Black attorneys from across Arizona called to offer mentorship. But Ariel wasn't interested in attention. She cared about the record. That video, the one that had been dismissed as irrelevant the day of her arrest, was now part of an official internal affairs investigation. Donnelly had been placed on administrative leave pending review. Some voices still defended him, of course. That was inevitable. He was just doing his job. She should have minded her own business. Why is everyone recording everything these days? But for every voice like that, two more spoke up. She stood her ground. She knew the rules better than they did. She changed something. At Roosevelt High, teachers noticed a shift. Students began asking questions differently, with more precision, more purpose. Some faculty members embraced the change, others resisted it. But something had undeniably transformed in the atmosphere. One afternoon after classes, Mr. Kirkwood called Ariel into his classroom. "I pulled some strings," he said, sliding a manila envelope across his desk. "Arizona State University has a summer law program, mentorship, mock trials, legal workshops. They take 20 students each year. I've already submitted your name." Ariel opened the folder, scanning the application. She didn't cry or jump for joy, just nodded once, decisively. "What made you decide to do it?" he asked. "Really? When most people would have taken the plea deal?" She considered the question carefully. "It wasn't just about me. It was making sure the next kid like me doesn't have to choose between being quiet or being in cuffs." He smiled, leaning back in his chair. I think you've got more than a binder now." For the first time in weeks, Ariel laughed. That night, sitting at the kitchen table that had been her legal war room, she wrote a single sentence on a blank sheet of paper. "They thought I came to defend myself, but I came to expose the truth." She didn't know exactly what her future held, but for the first time since that hot Tuesday afternoon, she would get to choose what came next, on her terms. Second, the story of Ariel Manning isn't just about a teenager who beat a criminal charge. It's about what happens when someone refuses to be silenced, when they prepare in private and speak with clarity in public, when they stand firm while being pushed into a corner. Ariel didn't go looking for a fight, but when it found her, she didn't flinch or retreat. She studied. She strategized. She stayed standing. She showed everyone watching that brilliance doesn't always wear a suit or carry a fancy title. Sometimes it looks like a 17-year-old girl with a homemade binder, a recovered video, and the courage to say, "That's not right." Because justice doesn't always descend from the top down. Sometimes it rises from the bottom up, beginning with someone no one ever saw coming.